Now, don't we all want a nice finish? Smooth, consistent, with a good-looking sheen on it. Well, there are examples of fine finishing all around us, from kitchen cabinets to maybe a wood entry door to maybe that frame around a mirror in your hallway. I'm Jim Heavey from Wood Magazine, and what we're going to do is show you how to apply those finishes by spraying them on. Now, most woodworkers are really concerned about putting on finishes because they've never been terribly consistent at it. It's been good sometimes and not so good other times. I'm going to show you how, when you spray a finish on and learn some of the basics of spraying, how you can provide a great looking finish all the time that you'll be very proud of. Now, there are many faces to spray finishing. The first that almost everybody's familiar with is a spray can. These all work about the same. You shake the can for the first minute or so to really mix the finish that's inside and apply a nice, easy finish. Now, these are pressured usually by butane or propane, and they're throwing an atomized finish onto the surface of a board. What you'll find in almost all cases, the spray pattern that you get out of these is a little bit more oval. One of the drawbacks to using a spray can is that what you're getting is about 25% coverage and 75% overspray. There's so much pressure in here to atomize that finish as it pushes it out that a lot of that finish that doesn't stick hits it so hard it either bounces back or oversprays. So what you're actually only getting is about 25% of the use out of this can. There is one thing, though, that I wanted to bring up that a lot of people don't realize when they're spray finishing, especially out of a can. Now, you'll notice something a little bit different on the nozzle of this spray can. This little red cover on the front actually has a line in it. And what you'll find is that by changing the direction of that line, either from horizontal to vertical, you're actually changing the spray pattern. It allows you a little adjustability when you're spraying something. It's kind of a great little feature. Maybe when you're looking for finish the next time, you look and see whether or not it's got one of those adjustable features on the front. Now, this is a second way to spray finishes. It works the same way. It's still using pressure to atomize that finish. But the difference here is that this bottom part is actually removable. And you can customize the finish that you're planning on spraying. So maybe you want to put a stain in here, or maybe you want to put some kind of a paint in here, or maybe you want to tint something. It works really well. So it's a great little thing to think about. It also comes with a cap that you can put on the top. So if you do make something really custom and you want to spray it again sometime, you can hold it that way. There are also a number of spray systems used to apply finishes, and they are airless, air-assisted airless, or maybe electrostatic. They're generally done by contractors and big factories to put finishes on. The two systems that are most used by consumers, those of us that do an awful lot of this stuff and woodworkers, are compressors and HVLP. So let's begin our discussion with compressors. They use compressed air through a gun like this to deliver finishes to a project. And compressors actually work fairly well, but they do have some variations in there that may make them a little bit less than perfect for applying finishes. The first is that compressed air will ultimately run out. And as the compressor recycles, it may change the type and form of that pattern, which may not apply finish quite as evenly. The second thing is, as compressors start up in the morning, the air is a lot cooler. As they run during the day and compress that air all day, that compression causes a little bit of heat, which again changes the heat that's in that line. And viscosity changes with differences in temperature, so you kind of have to be aware of that. The third thing is that compressors like this, when they compress air, if the air is relatively humid, they begin to compress that humidity into moisture. That moisture and sometimes oil can get into a spray line, and that really messes up a finish. And what we're going to suggest is, if you're going to use a compressor, try and get an inline filter that takes both the air and the oil out of that line so that you can spray something a little bit better without worrying about that contamination in the finish. And lastly, what I would suggest is that you think about a bigger compressor. Most of the real efficient guns may work off a smaller compressor like this, but in most cases you're going to need a 20 or 30 gallon compressor with the ability to keep up with the air demands that that gun is going to provide. Now let's talk a little bit about the turbine system. In a turbine system, you're using a high volume of air through a gun like this to provide that nice atomized finish. In a turbine system, you're providing a continuous supply of warm, dry air. This is not compressing anything. It's not subject to those same cycles you may have with a compressor. And lastly, because we're using a large volume of air as opposed to pressure to put this finish on, you'll have 75 to 90% of that finish stays on a project, with only about 10 or 15%, maybe 25% at tops, as overspray. So it's a much more efficient system when you're talking about it. The last thing, and one of the ways I guess to make the easiest comparison, is to talk about the hoses between the two of these. In a compressor system, we're talking about a hose like this that is a relatively small diameter, meant to deliver high pressure. That's how it atomizes this finish. In a turbine type system, we're using a much bigger hose to do that same thing. With the larger hoses, we're getting a lot more volume and not as much pressure. One of the ways to show it, I guess, is like this with a soda straw. If I think about this as that small diameter hose from my compressor, and I want to exhaust all the air from my lungs through this, I have to blow very hard, create an awful lot of pressure to push that air out. But if I'm talking about a turbine type system, I can use this paint roller. I can exhaust that same amount of air through my lungs with a much bigger opening. I blow all that air out, so what you're getting is the same volume, but you're getting a lot less pressure doing it. That's the difference between these two systems. Now, both of these systems will provide a great finish, both the compressed air system and the turbine. But generally speaking, I like for my finishing the turbine type system. I found that the uninterrupted flow of warm, consistent air makes it much easier and more consistent for me to put on a good looking finish. Now, you may be wondering whether or not you can use an HVLP gun on your compressor. The fact is you can. A lot of manufacturers now are making guns highly efficient that are HVLP guns working off your compressor. Now the pressure in those guns will be closer to maybe 25 pounds or 20 pounds. We're using an HVLP system, they're only 6 or 8, but you bet you can definitely use an HVLP gun with your compressor. The most important aspect of spraying on a finish, as opposed to brushing it, is the atomization of that finish. Atomization is subjecting a liquid finish to air pressure and creating a fine mist. These real even droplets are deposited on the top of the wood then in a very uniform way. And because they're all the same size, they are drying and curing the same way. In this case, the viscosity of the finish and the air pressure used to push it are perfectly proportioned. We've got a beautiful surface. On the other side of this is under atomization. In this case, the droplet sizes are not all the same. Some are bigger, some are smaller, and they lie on the surface that way. What happens is they cure at different rates and dry at different rates, leaving a very uneven surface. What we call that is orange peel in some cases. So the variables are viscosity and pressure. And viscosity is the thickness of a liquid. All liquids can be atomized. By increasing the pressure, you increase the possibility of overspray. By reducing the viscosity, you will add additional coats. Now in HVLP spraying, the only variable is viscosity. The turbine produces a constant flow of air volume and air pressure, and you just thin the finish to match the gun specs. The easiest way to show this is do a real-life situation, and we'll talk about a finish and actually how to get it through a gun. Now, in creating this real-life situation, I've decided to choose polyurethane. You can choose whatever you want. Polyurethane's natural thinner is mineral spirit, so I've got a can of that too. We've got HVLP sprayer, and we've got our gun. Now, I told you earlier that HVLP spraying, the only variable is viscosity. So what I need with this gun is the owner's manual. In the owner's manual, if I scroll down here, you'll see that under varnishes, and polyurethane is a varnish, it can be thinned, that finish, from 20 to 30%, in this case with mineral spirits. And I also have a viscosity of 16 to 22 seconds. And what I'm going to do to judge that viscosity is use what's called a viscosity cup. These normally come with your guns. If you have to buy one, they're very inexpensive. Here's how this is done. I'm going to dip this down into the fluid. The fluid's going to fill up in this cup, and it's going to run out of a real small hole on this end of the cup. What I want to do is judge the time it takes to go from a straight stream as it comes out to begin to get those individual drops. You'll kind of see this when I do it. When I stop my stopwatch, as long as I fall into that 16 to 22 seconds, I've got the perfect viscosity for this gun. That's how easy this is, and let me show you how it's done. All right, let's drop this cup in there. I've got a watch here to kind of keep a track of the time. I fill that cup up with finish. Kind of wait until my watch has kind of gotten to that spot where I know I can keep an eye on it. If you've got a stopwatch, it works even better. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this up right here, and we're going to watch that straight stream. So as I watch that stream coming down, I want to stop my watch or take a look at the time when it goes from a straight stream to individual drips. So we're getting close here. Now, so what I'll do is look at, and I see we're falling at about 25 seconds, which is slightly outside the parameters of this chart, which tells me 16 to 22. I will mix a little bit of mineral spirits, the normal thinner for this, and then try that test again. And as soon as I get it thin enough, thin that viscosity some, to get it down between 16 and 22 seconds, that's what varnish calls for, it's ready for the gun. One little caution, when doing water-based finishes, if they are a little bit thick, make sure that you remember that you can't thin a water-based finish much more than 10%. It chemically ruins the finish. So most finishes, water-based, will spray right out of the can. But if you have to thin them, just be real careful with how much water you're adding to that finish. And lastly, sometimes in the early morning or late in the day, a finish can be a little bit thicker or thinner. In real cold weather, finishes are naturally thicker than they are in warm. Those will show up in your viscosity tests. So my suggestion is, even though you may have thinned that finish once before, thin it again just before you're ready to do your spraying, depending upon the time of the year or the day, and make sure that you've got the right viscosity for that time of the day. Your finishes will be perfect. I know you're wondering, is there any way to stop grain raising when you're using water-based finishes? The short answer is no, but you can minimize it. Sand first to 320 grit, apply a very fine mist to finish first, and after it dries, sand those risen whiskers with very fine 400 grit paper, and then apply your second and third full coats. You won't see any problem after that. Now let's talk about the mechanics of using a gun like this. The first on this end is called a fluid control. If I turn this all the way in, I can literally shut off the amount of fluid that's coming in, so I'm not spraying anything. As I adjust this out, I can add a little bit more fluid each time. So in some cases, you may want to spread a little bit more or less fluid on a project. This is the way to do it. The second thing is varying the type or the height of the fan on the front, and this one's fairly easy to do. On the side here, you'll notice there's little markings. This fan control on the positive side provides a real broad, real tall fan. And as I slowly move it towards the top, it gets narrower and narrower. And when I finally get to the negative side of it, it's all the way down to a simple single spray. And the last thing is the direction of that fan. In this case, you'll see that the horn in the front here is faced horizontally. It's going to force air on either side, and it's going to force that fluid straight up, a more vertical pattern. If I turn this vertically, it's going to force fluid from the top and the bottom, and it's going to make a more horizontal pattern. And that's all there is to using a spray gun. I know you're going to ask, do I have to clean the gun every time I use it? When you let go of the trigger, the valve seals the gun and keeps the air from affecting the finish inside. Cleaning is only necessary after you haven't used the gun for a long period of time. Generally, if after 24 hours you haven't used the gun, I would clean it. And the last thing to remember is, the longer that finish sits in the gun, it's going to sit like it does in a can, and it may begin to settle out. You're still going to have to stir it before you spray. Well, this is a time to talk a little bit about what we just got done seeing. You notice that I was wearing goggles, and I'm also wearing a respirator mask, and of course I've got some rubber gloves on. A lot of people feel that goggles are a good idea and glasses are, and they always are all the time. But I found that a lot of people, especially when they're spraying a water-based finish, water-based poly in this case, that respirators don't have to be worn. The fact is that it's still polyurethane, and once the water evaporates away, it's still a polyurethane you're inhaling, so it's always important to have a respirator. It's also important to reduce flame and spark potential, especially when you're spraying flammable material. I would suggest that any time you spray something flammable, though, you do it outside your shop. If you're spraying water-based material, you can still do it inside your shop, as long as you've got a window open and, of course, you're wearing one of your respirators. I find, too, that dust is a problem in the shop. So I'll vacuum real well, and if I'm really concerned about dust moving around, I'll take a fine spray mist of water and spray it on the floor, and that kind of helps settle it just a little bit. And also remember, these machines take an awful lot of air and they move a lot of air. So a backup supply of air is important. Again, an open window will really help, and keeping the dust down will keep those things from affecting your finish. Now, as long as we're talking about it here too, might as well talk about cleaning the gun. This is a water-based polyurethane. And in my water-based polyurethane, all I'm going to do is open the can and pour what's left in the container back in my original can. I'll fill this container with soapy water and wash all of the areas that I can get to, and then finally put fresh water in here and spray it out. That usually will do a pretty good job. If you're doing lacquer or polyurethane, use the appropriate solvents for each one of those. Ultimately, there'll come the time when you're going to have to do a deep cleaning of this gun, cleaning all the waterways and the airways. The key in this is using one of the accessory kits that are available to do that. Don't try and use a needle or a toothpick to clean those delicate little air passages, because you could deform them, and that will change the direction or the perfectness, if there is such a word, of those spray patterns. So the idea is that's important. The last thing is, you may be spraying some really viscous materials, and you may find that the needle and cap set that came with your gun aren't quite adequate for that. The manufacturers sell additional needle and cap kits to go with almost any type of finish. And you're best off to talk to your manufacturer of not only the finish, but your gun to find out what it is that you do need. I know you're going to ask, how long do I have to wait before sanding or recoating? The drying times on all finishes are based on 72 degrees. If the temperature is cooler or warmer, you're going to have to make adjustments to the times you see on the cans. In closing, we've given you an awful lot of things to think about when you're doing spray finishing, but there's nothing that suffices like being on task. I found that generally overanalysis leads to paralysis. Your best bet is just go back in your shop and start shooting. So you may wonder, can I tint my finish? Yes, you can. In fact, the blue finish that you saw in this demonstration was tinted with UTCs, Universal Tinting Colors.